Hey, what's up, guys? Jeff Kamke here with Wealth Energetics. I'm super excited for a podcast today with Matt Goodrich. He's a chiropractor out in Oregon. I've gotten to know him in the last year or so, and we're very much on the same page. We're not just all about health or all about money. Like, we're all about building a life that we love and increasing all areas of our life, whether that's our spiritual pursuits, our health, our fitness, our mental capacities, our business. Like, we're just growth seekers, and him and I have hit it off right away. We've exchanged so many messages through Facebook Messenger in the last year, just chatting and going back and forth on stuff. So I'm really excited to jump into some great conversation today around all those kind of topics. So let me introduce him a little bit further. He's been a chiropractor for 13 years, and he's very much into fitness and health. And it's been a part of his life, as many of us are. It's not like he just started that when he got into his career. It's been a lifelong thing for him. And like I said, both of us were truth seekers. We want to know the deeper truths and what resonates to our core. And it's definitely something that Matt brings to the table. So I'm excited for our conversation today, Matt. Thanks for joining us. And, want to share anything additional to your bio about your experience, we'll kind of start there and then just see where the conversation flows.
Sure, sounds good. I really appreciate you having me on. So yeah, I've been a chiropractor for 13 years now, and started an online fitness business almost 4 years ago. And between those two businesses and three kids and a wife, and that works sometimes an opposite schedule of me, it's pretty crazy. But somehow I figured out how to kind of balance it all, and it's been a good ride. So um, gosh, I'll let you ask away to see where to take it, because there's so many different directions that we could go there.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, one of the things you just mentioned, wife and kids, I've got two young ones at home as well. And, just give me some perspective on, what you found to be a way to balance all that, because I think my wife sees this and what she's doing, which is more of the coaching side, where we're entrepreneurs, we want to build a business, we're seeking freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, we're going for those kind of things. But we've got the family, we don't want to neglect that because it's very easy to pour ourselves into our business and maybe not spend as much time at home. I know I'm guilty of that, where it's like, Dad, you work all the time and you've got goals and you're trying to achieve more, but then there's this balance of like, man, if I pour everything into my business, I'm going to totally miss my kids. And I've already gone through that enough, where I look back at like Google Photos of like, oh, on this day 4 years ago, and I'm like, dang, I wasn't at that one. And then you go, oh, 5 years ago, I wasn't there at that one. So how have you found to balance some of that? Because I think in some conversation we've had before, you've found some balance in that. So what are some tips and keys? Because I'm sure some of the people that are going to watch this in the future are probably exactly what we're describing, where
Yeah.
they're entrepreneurs or business owners, but they want to maintain that balance and be successful at home with their wives, have romance, have kids that are going to grow up and be productive members of society and are purpose filled and are driven. And
Mhm.
how have you found some ways to balance that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great place to start too. Well, first off, I will say I'm not perfect yet at any of that, right?
Right, right.
But what I found is, so family's first. Like, that's why I do everything. Is my family, my kids. Um, I want to have, I want to provide us the lifestyle that affords us to do some fun things in life, right? But in order to do that, we have to be disciplined in our business and make sure that's growing. And the way that I balance that is, I remember when I'm getting caught up in my work, I remember why I did this in the first place. And I think scheduling things and being very, what's the word, very vigilant and disciplined with my calendar, I think is very important, because it's easy for things to bleed over. I could easily work 16 hours a day. Like, it's a lot of it's fun, right? So it's easy just to kind of be in front of the computer and typing away and working hard, and the hours has passed by a lot of the times. But whenever I have my calendar and I follow that, I block out certain times for certain activities, and I don't let my business life bleed over into my family life. Once my kids are home, once I'm home from work, it's fully on them 100%. Most of the time, not every time. Some cycles of business are busier than others, right?
Sure.
And so, sometimes that does bleed over. On the other end of that, I think it's important to have a really supportive spouse that understands where you're coming from. My wife, basically she says, whatever you have to do, honey, just go and do it. And if sometimes that means staying home from a camping trip to get some things done, she's good with that. But those aren't too often. Those were a lot more often, a year, 2, 3 years ago, a
Mhm.
little less so now. But I think just remembering why you're doing it and being pretty disciplined with your calendar and actually blocking things off for time spots, I think is two big keys.
That's great. Yeah, my current mentor that we were talking about before we started the recording at our new agency, he speaks of being intentional. The name of his company is Life 180, and the life is
Yeah,
live intentionally for excellence. And he's all about, he's like, I'll know if you're successful. Show me your calendar. Pull up your phone,
yeah,
pull up Google Calendar. He's like, I'll know if you're going to be successful or not. And it's like, it's one of those you kind of like slouch down in your chair.
yeah,
It's like that's an area I need to improve in dramatically. I'm not intentional with that. A lot of the things that I do can be unpredictable, and there's variance in that. So I've had a hard time like nailing
mhm,
down, I'm not a W-2 employee where I just go off to work. I'm there at 8,
right.
come home at 4:30. Life is externally predictable and there's that structure externally that you just kind of fall into. That's the harder
Mhm,
part sometimes with entrepreneurs and business owners is it's all up to us. It's our own discipline that makes it work or not work. And
exactly.
trying to find that balance. So those are
Yeah.
great tips that seem so simple, like, oh, just have a calendar. Well, there's got to
Mhm.
be a deeper, spiritual thing about all this. Like, no, sometimes just do the
Just
basics, right?
yeah.
I know other mentors we've had are, just master the basics of whatever it is you're doing. There's so many
Yeah.
basics that we gloss over looking for that secret or that hack or that shortcut.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, no, no. It's just go back to the basics. Like
Yeah.
look at your calendar, and it's something my wife and I have been much more intentional about in the last few months is like let's it whether it's in the evening before the next day or in the morning, try to go over what schedules for the day and be on the same page. And just communication amongst spouse
Yeah.
can be so key in being successful and setting up your day and your week for success, to know what each
Mhm.
other's doing, to be supportive of the time, if there is, like you said, a time commitment that bleeds into more family time or those kind of things, to make sure that you're getting the support and everybody's on
Mhm.
the same page. Those are some really good tips around all that. So let's talk a little bit about the health side, because I've been a chiropractic patient my entire life. My parents
Yeah.
were, and I went chiropractor a couple days old, I think, and it's been a part of my life. And so very well versed in chiropractic from the patient side or the customer side, right? And what that experience can look like. And I've been to the chiropractors that they do the same adjustment every time you're there. And then, there's chiropractors that I think are more the new generation of chiropractors where they understand nutrition and how our thinking plays into it and the lifestyle factors and all that. And I know that's more where
Mhm.
you come from. So I'd
Yeah,
like to hear
exactly.
your perspective of chiropractic and health and how you help your patients. And I know your focus has been more on fitness and weight loss and some of those things. So I'd love to
Yep.
hear about your journey and how you got from, maybe even discovering that chiropractic was your passion, and maybe how you saw beyond just cracking bones, doing I think one chiropractor called the flying seven was do the same seven
Yeah,
adjustments
that's
every
right.
every time. And, how did you evolve into what you're doing now? I'd love to hear a little bit of your story on that.
For sure. Wow. Yeah, this could be a long one, so I'll try not to make it too long.
Sure.
So, my dad was always into health and fitness. I would wait on the porch steps at home while he went out for runs when I was, 3, 4, 5 with my mom, and that was a big part of our. Well, fitness was a big part of his life, and we had a gym in our basement, and he introduced me to weightlifting and exercise and all that. And so that was a part of my life. And I kind of just found myself naturally gravitating toward reading nutrition labels in middle school. Like no one told me to do that. I just was like interested. Oh, that's, pasta, or, looking at see what I'm actually consuming and what that actually means. And I started reading the old muscle and fitness magazines with those big, bodybuilder guys. And I'd read those articles and was really more interested in the nutrition than anything else. But of course, being an impressionable, 11, 12, 13-year old, you're trying to do the same routines these big guys are doing and not getting anywhere, right?
Right.
So, but it was still fun to do. And I got more and more interested in nutrition and from kind of the muscle building end of it initially. And then it started to move into holistically, like how to improve health, how to optimize health. That took me into college as a dietetics major. And so I was in dietetics for a bit, but quickly realized, oh, wait a minute, this is basically just a branch from the American Medical Association that is trying to manage diseases, not to reverse them.
Hmm.
And so after my first year, I was a little bit disillusioned, like, oh, where do I go? My goal is to open up a nutrition clinic and help heal people. I can't really do this with this route that I'm going. So I talked to my best friend Greg. His mom, she had cancer, and she went to see a naturopath, or I should say, a chiropractor and nutritionist who essentially practiced as a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor.
Hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, you should see Dr. Weiner." And so, and I told her my, my dilemma, and she's like, "Oh, go see Dr. Weiner. Maybe he can give you some clarity." And it was one of those meetings. I don't know if you ever had a meeting like this. You probably have, where before you had the meeting, you knew it was going to be life changing. I just knew my, I was gonna have an epiphany. This was going to be a big, important moment for me, and I don't know why, but it just felt that way. So I go to his office, Dr. Weiner's office, and I meet him, and he's an eclectic guy with this American flag bald eagle tie and cat wallpaper in his office. I'm like, it's all nothing but cats on the wallpaper, and just a really eclectic vibe. And he does some muscle testing, which was really foreign to me at the time, and I went in there with the symptoms of allergies. Allergies were always a big problem for me, and so I went there to have my allergies improved, and we just had a conversation. I told him, my situation. I mean, really quickly dive deeply into spirituality and medicine and health and just the interweaving of those topics. And in that meeting, essentially, to fast forward a little bit, my spiritual path and my career path were laid out in one meeting. And by my spiritual path, what I mean is, at that time, I had also been kind of diving deep into what my faith is. I was raised Catholic, and that was fine. But I felt like there was more to this story, more to Jesus, more to all this than what I was being taught. And I had read a ton of other books at that point, a lot on Eastern thought, metaphysics, things like that. And he was like, "Oh, you should read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda." And also, in so many words, he said, "You should go to chiropractic school. That's going to help you figure out, put all the pieces together. You can add in nutrition or, whatever else you want." So I was like, perfect. So I went home, I read Autobiography of a Yogi. It was like a light bulb moment. Like, this is my path. Kriya Yoga, that's mentioned in the book. This is my path, which I'm still following to this day. And then I decided to change my major when I went back to school and set the path to become a chiropractor. And I studied sports medicine for the rest of my career in college, and then moved on into chiropractic school after that. And so that's kind of the origin story of how I became a chiropractor anyway. And how I practice has evolved over time, but I've always the foundation of what I do is always coming back to nutrition, and optimizing health. Because if you don't get your nutrition right, I mean, you're not going to be optimized in any other way. You can't out supplement a bad diet, right?
Right.
You can spend all the money on supplements that you want, but if your foundation isn't good, if what you're putting into your body every single day isn't optimal, then it's going to be tough to get healthier. So in practice, yeah, it's a combination of obviously adjustments that vary widely for different people for different reasons. And it always falls back on, so okay, what does your nutrition look like? How can we optimize that? Sometimes even blood work, and seeing what that looks like and following up with the blood work side of things and improving those. And then that led me into, oh, how can I help even more people instead of just one-on-one practice, where you can only help so many? Let's leverage this and go online where I can help even more people, and implementing very similar styles of practice without obviously the adjustments, but focusing not only on weight loss, but optimizing their health as well.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
I know weight loss has been a thing I've seen a lot on your Facebook and some of the social
Yeah.
media things you're doing. So I'd like to dig into that a little bit too. And like, what are some of the keys to somebody that wants to lose weight? Because that's something that, especially we're here in January of a new year again, and the
Yeah.
resolution time frame that, probably most people are are off the bandwagon. Now that we're at February 2nd, we're percentage of the population's already long gone on that dream, and we'll
Yeah.
try again next year. But for those that are serious and committed to losing weight, there's so many facets to it, and it can be very confusing. It can be very overwhelming. I think there's so many areas of health that can be very hard for consumers to know what supplement should I take, and is this brand better than this brand? And there's just so much marketing and confusion. I think that's just across the board on everything. I mean, you can scroll Facebook and be confused on which, coach to go with and which bed sheets you should buy. And I mean, there's so many things that are being thrown at us. And I think that, at least from my perspective, can be very confusing for the public that does want to lose weight. They know they need to lose, maybe a few pounds or a lot of weight to get healthy. Where can somebody start? What have you found in your experience to be like good? These are the foundational pillars of weight loss. If you do these things, you're more than likely going to get, predictable results. And without the confusion, you're not going to do this and stumble and struggle and then have to go find some other place or some other method that's going to do it. What have you found and it's not just the quick fix, it's more of like the sustained transformation for someone to lose weight and adapt a new lifestyle that supports being healthy and keeping that weight off? What are some of those foundational pieces?
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, we could spend 2 hours talking about this too.
Exactly, right.
Let's see where to start here. So it really depends on how much someone has to lose, because if you have a lot to lose, I think the simplest place to start is to look at, okay, are you drinking your calories? Is there any beverages in your life that are adding to the caloric load that you otherwise could just stop? And sometimes that alone, I know, I don't know about you, but I've heard people, they say, oh, they just stopped drinking soda and they lost, 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that simple to get started. Um, our brains like to go for the sexy and the complicated and the hack. Um, but like you said in the beginning, sometimes those foundational things are the best, or I should say all the time, the foundational things are the best places to start. Now, as if it's more like, oh, I have 10 or 15 pounds to lose, the less you have to lose and the closer you are to your goal weight, then the more dialed in you have to be. And so for my clients, I take them on one of two paths. We either provide them with a meal plan that is full of quality foods that they don't really have to think about calories. And as long as they're focusing on these quality foods, then they're going to, 9 times out of 10, they're going to lose weight. Or we look at calories, because, there's a difference between eating healthy and eating right for weight loss. And it might sound a little bit like a contradiction to what I was saying before with how I practice and optimizing, how you eat. But when it comes to, regardless of health, when it comes to weight loss, like we're just talking pure weight loss, what matters most is the amount of, if you're eating less than the amount of energy that requires to maintain your body weight, meaning in calories. If you're eating less than that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose weight. What I find though, and what gets tricky, particularly with women, which is who I mostly work with, I find that they are chronic undereaters.
Mm.
And what happens here, because a lot of times I'll get, well, I don't eat that much and I still am heavy, if you're a chronic undereater, then your metabolism is going to slow down and slow down. And what we have to do is actually feed it. So it's really difficult to say there's, just this one thing you have to do and you'll lose weight, because a lot of times it's actually having to feed the metabolism and eat more to actually, turn the metabolism back on, so to speak, in order for the body to feel safe enough for it to shed weight. Because if it's always being chronically underfed, the thyroid metabolism is all down regulated or slower, and so if it doesn't know when its next meal is coming, so it holds on to everything it has. So that's another angle from it, or with it. I went off a little bit of a tangent and lost a little bit of my thought process there, but you can't just eat garbage and less calories and expect to lose weight, and everyone's a little bit different. But again, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but feel free to ask me another angle of that to get me back to center here.
Yeah, perfect. So like with just some of those pillars of weight loss,
Yep.
we've talked about, looking at calories and identifying the simple calories. Like you said, if it was a Coke that you were drinking right there, which I know it's a Zevia, we love
Oh,
Zevia
it's a
too.
Zevia.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Rock on Zevia. I love Zevia.
Yep. Yep.
Um, doing those simple things, but then where depending on what the situation is, you have to attack it from different
Yep.
angles, and there's the food side. So just some of those foundational pieces that, are more of a predictable, and again, there may not be always do it in this order or always these exact things, but
Yep.
just kind of a general recipe for those that are wondering like, how do I actually do this and make it a permanent shift for the sustained period of time?
Oh yeah, for the sustainability of it, of course. Um, I think coming back to your why, that's the foundation of everything. Why are you doing it in the first place? And sometimes, you know, people just aren't in a spot where their why is big enough, where the pain is strong enough to propel them to actually make the changes that they want to make. And so I have an exercise that I take my clients through is the 5 to 7 layers of why.
Nice.
It's why am I doing this? Oh, I want to lose weight. Well, why? Well, because I want to feel better, have more energy. Well, why? Well, because I want to have more energy for my kids. And ultimately, it should come down to some sort of deep emotional reason why that really hits you in the gut. And this is, what you focus on. I'll have them write it down, put it on their phone, put it on their mirror, whatever it is, just to kind of remind them every day, this is why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that is, if you can get in touch with your why, then the how takes care of itself, right?
Right.
And I always say that we all have that A plus area of our life, whether it's finances, our marriage, our kids, our career, whatever it is. There's probably some area in your life where you're kicking butt, and maybe it isn't in your health, but what are some of those habits that you're doing in the A plus areas of your life? You're probably, thinking about it often. You're probably doing, the 3 to 5 habits every single day that continue to generate success in that area. And you just take those foundational principles again and apply them to your health. There's really only about 3 things you got to do. You have to prepare your food for the day so that you don't have an unexpected, moment where you're out for 8 hours and there's no food in sight and you're just go for fast food. It has to be quality food, and you have to move your body. If you get those things down every single day, then you're probably going to be moving forward in your health. So those are some ways to keep this a sustainable lifestyle. Now there's other nuances to that, but without getting into a whole lot of technical detail, I think that's a good place for most people to start.
Yeah, I love that you get into the why, because that's, if you don't connect to that deeper reason, that's where so many people just do it for a short period of time and then go back to the
Yeah.
poor diet that created the problem to begin with and live the rest of the year that way. And then in January, flip the switch for a little while until that wears off. And, there's not that sustainability out of that because you're not connecting anything deeper. And I think that element is so foundational to everything in life, to changing anything. And I think so many people are looking for ways to improve and ways to transform and evolve and expand. And that, I know, at least in the communities you and I are part of, that is what we're all doing. We're wanting to be better versions of ourselves. And how do we get there? We have to tap into something deeper than just the stuff on the surface that's shiny and sexy, like you said, that
Yeah.
doesn't have the pull to it to make it a permanent shift. And like you said, when you're looking for the deeper things that you're doing in other areas of your life that are, the A plus, like you said, when I look at my life, okay, well, there's a strong desire there. I love doing business. So I could do that all day, every day. Like you say, you can easily blow 16 hours and not pay attention to anything else in your life because you're consuming it because
Mhm.
you love doing that. So, you know, how does someone, maybe that doesn't love exercise or doesn't love eating certain foods, how can they, find that place? Do you find
Mhm.
that just by discovering their why that they're like, oh, okay, now does it, once they connect to that deeper part of themselves, do you see that helps someone make those shifts into doing maybe things that they previously didn't find too exciting or whatever? Get into that a little bit. I'd like to see what you have to say around that, because that's something that I think
Yeah.
is pervasive in all the personal development community, law of attraction community, all that is the change. How do you make a change? And you see so many experts talking about how do you make change. So I'm just curious what your experience has been with people
Yeah.
in the weight loss side being able to connect to that.
Yeah, and I think that varies from person to person, but I think your why gives you that initial motivation and an initial reason. And I always say there's motivation here to get you started. Then there's discipline, and then there's identity, right?
Mhm. Right.
And not everyone gets to an identity where meaning motivation starts that initial charge to get you going. It lasts for, a day to 2 weeks, maybe a month if you're lucky. And then at some point the rubber meets the road and you have to decide, okay, is this something that I want to continue to do? And how do we transition from just living off motivation to actually being disciplined? And I think that is where you once you start implementing some simple changes like upgrading the quality of your food, changing, not drinking your calories anymore and moving your body, you begin to get some momentum, right? And so that momentum is encouraging, and you begin to realize that uh, my goal to help them realize this is to start to realize that how you feel is a higher priority than what you get to eat. Stuffing yourself silly is only enjoyable for so long, but whenever you actually start to feel better and you have more energy and you're sleeping better, you know focusing on what you're getting out of the effort that you're putting in, I think is a really good way to keep that going. And then discipline becomes a bit easier. And then above discipline is identity. So like for me, people ask me, okay, why do you exercise, why do you eat well? I don't have a great answer. It's just who I am, it's just what I do. It's I enjoy it. And not everyone can get to that point where it's just something that they do, it's their identity. But it's something that I help people help to realize in themselves, that in order to make a really lasting change, this just has to be something that you are, something that you do. um, and so the more that you have that momentum and the more changes you see, the easier it is to continue on. Um, and whenever you after people have created that transformation, uh, it's hard to see yourself how great you look compared to where you were and say, oh, I want to go back there now. So that journey looks a little bit different for everyone, but that's kind of the best way I could lay that out.
Yeah, so it's getting somebody to see a success, whether it be minute, and
Hmm.
get that positive feeling and start some momentum building. And then once
Yeah.
you get it going, like, oh, I do feel a little better. I'm sleeping better. I don't have as many aches and pains. Now it's
Right.
like, oh, okay, now I'm willing to do more because I'm seeing progress. I'm seeing it working. It's working, right? So then I'm
Yeah.
reminded of what's called in some of the things I've been a part of is the success or momentum cycle that, once
Yeah.
you have a little success, then it changes your thoughts to be more motivating and you're going to want to take more action. That creates more confidence and that
Right.
generally is going to set you up for more successes. And if you can keep that going, then voila, oh my gosh, I've lost 35 pounds. I look the best I've looked and bikini looks amazing and I'm ready for summer and that whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's really
Exactly.
cool.
And there's no victory too small to celebrate. If we train our brains to celebrate even the tiniest of victories, I put my shoes next to the bed this morning versus with the intention of exercise, and I didn't yesterday. Hey, that's a victory. You're moving in the direction of wins. And so always celebrating the small wins, because it's easy for people to be hard on themselves, and even lose 2 or 5 pounds and be like, oh, it's not 40 pounds that and just be hard on themselves. And the mindset piece is a big piece that I work with people on. It's like, no, you lost 2 pounds. You put your shoes in front of the bed. You moved more. You had more steps today than you did yesterday. Those are really huge things that I think if you train, or research has shown, not I think, but the research has shown, if you train your brain to celebrate those, you're going to reinforce that behavior, and it's just going to get that much easier.
Hmm. Love it. Love it. I'm glad you touched on, that inner stuff because I'd like to go into more like the spiritual side here and delve into that because my life, in a way like you, I mean, I grew up in the church, in the Christian church, Baptist and then Methodist, growing up, and so many of the things that you're speaking to of how can somebody lose weight and tapping into your why and finding that deeper connection. I mean, that's a bigger piece than just in weight loss, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
like a foundational human thing. Like, why are we here and what is my purpose? And that just stems into every part of our life, right? I mean, it affects our relationships, it affects our career and all those things. And as I've gotten older, and you said there was aspects of growing up in church that I know for me just didn't seem to hit the mark. It felt like there was limitations placed around that those teachings, and there was more to the story and more to experience and all that. And I know as I got into my 20s and we got married, and my wife and I remember sitting on our first date, and my wife was explaining the way she viewed things. I'm like, man, you just explained my religious beliefs better than I think I could have articulated them at that time. And it was like, oh, how amazing that we were on the same page on that, because my relationship prior to that, we weren't on the same page
Mhm.
on religion. And so, that was a wonderful thing to come together at that level. And since we've been married and all the different things that we've gotten into, whether it be, personal growth things, law of attraction, the spiritual growth, any of those kind of things, I've had the dynamic happen so many times where it's like, why didn't they teach me that in church? All
Mhm.
these different principles, and I was doing a recording like yesterday for my YouTube channel and just talking about a little bit of that, and how I know growing up in the church, there was like this unspoken dollar amount that seemed to be like you could earn up until this and you're still a good Christian. But then
Mm.
once you go above this certain number, and I never knew what that number was, they could never tell you, but it was like that point you like flipped the switch and you became evil. And anybody that makes too much money obviously is screwing people. And there was always that odd dynamic just around money.
Mhm.
And there's just been so many things in my life that when I've learned a deeper truth to whatever topic it is, whether it's about money, about abundance, about how we should be living and the freedoms. And there were so many things that went counter to what I had learned growing up in the church. And not to foo-foo that, I think I remember one pastor in particular, Pastor Hill. He was amazing. I can remember taking notes in, like, late elementary school, maybe middle school, like taking notes at church, and taking notes on his sermons, because they would just like
Mhm.
touch your soul at a certain
Yeah.
point. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like, it feeds you. It's exactly what I needed to hear. And then I know somewhere in high school, I started my lawn and landscaping business at that time, got into that. So I wasn't engaged in the church too much. I know there was a pastoral change. And I know at that time, like, there wasn't anything that like hit the spot anymore for me. And then it
Mm.
wasn't until I got into personal growth and law of attraction and started learning about the power of the mind and quantum physics and all these different aspects. It's like, okay, now this is feeding my soul, kind of where I'm at now. It was that
Yeah.
evolution. And there's been so many things along the way, teachers and things that have just filled that spot, that it hasn't been the church anymore. I know, anybody that's listening that maybe is a Christian will go, oh, you're backsliding, or you know, you're destined for hell now because you're not going to church every Sunday and all that. And not that, spirituality isn't a part of my life, and my connection to God is still a big part of my life. It may not just be in the traditional forms that it was when I was growing up,
Yeah.
but those have just been some interesting cognitions I've had and observations of how, there's so much information out there. And like you said, a lot of it comes from other philosophies on how we are aligned to a greater power than ourselves. I think one of my observations has been a lot of the different world religions. I know at their roots they can have some differences, but I think if you get down to a lot of the fundamentals, so many religions are talking about generally the same things. They might use, one might say we're praying, another one might say, well, we're sending you good energy. Well,
Mhm.
what's the physiological process? Well, I'm thinking of something and I'm sending those thoughts either to God or to a person. Like, so like physiology, you're doing the same process with a lot of those things. And I think we get hung up on terms, and we like to argue on some of that stuff, when in reality we're actually talking, and a lot of times, about the same processes going on. And I found a lot of that fascinating. So I'm curious, what some of your journey is. You've already mentioned a little bit of it, but
Yeah.
just curious, what your path has been, because that's excuse me, been some of my path, and just realizing more truths are outside of the church and outside of the Bible. And it's even been or when you learn truths from another discipline and you go back to the Bible, And I've been to seminars and heard different speakers that, are still very much entrenched in the Christian traditions, but they've, learned other disciplines and they've been able to enhance what the Bible says. And they take a Bible story and deconstruct it in maybe the way that it's traditionally taught and go, hey, but yeah, this is really what it could mean. This is really the deeper truths. If you dig into maybe the original text about what it means, like this is the power that we have, and this is the type of life that is possible for all of us to live. And to me, it's taken on an expanded form by, exchanging those. So just, share some thoughts around, your journey around all that. I'm curious to what, all that's been for you.
For sure. I will preface it by saying I apologize. My dog is crying because my wife left. So if you hear some squealing in the background,
Oh, good.
that's why. Maybe she might have to come up onto my lap here for her to be. Maybe not. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So I grew up in I was raised Catholic. Catholic. I actually went to Catholic grade school, high school, and college.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, wow. Um, and we would go to confession as early as maybe 8, 9 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. We go to confession, and I would think in the back of my head, how is there some sort of like math equation? Like if I said that I was angry at my parents or I pushed a friend or something like that, is there some sort of like math equation that like pushing a friend equaled two our fathers and one Hail Mary? Or like, how did this all compute, right? So this is my
Right.
8-year-old brain. And I remember sitting back down for one particular confession and thinking like, what about how I breathe? What about how I sit? What about how I think? Like, what are those? Is there some level of sin to that, if of doing or not doing something? And I thought of all these like little gray areas, and that was kind of like the wheel sort of starting to turn a little bit, and getting deeper. And I have this specific memory of going to, I don't know if you remember Borders bookstore. There's Barnes and Noble now, but there was a Borders back where
Right.
I was from in the East Coast. Um, I remember being in the metaphysical section with my parents, and I opened up a book and it said something about reality being an illusion. I was like, I don't know what that means now, but I know I will at some point in my life. Just weird, random stuff like that, right? These little like hints. Um, and so I get a little older, maybe I think around junior year of high school, I started to really think about, okay, there's got to be more to this Jesus guy than what I'm being taught. And we had studied the Bible in school, and I was going to church every Sunday. And let me know, is that coming up? Can you hear her a lot or no?
I did a little bit there, but I hadn't up until then.
Okay, because I'm happy to maybe relocate her if we need to.
Okay.
Jim,
Yeah.
should I do that? Or are
If,
you okay?
yeah, you might. If you think she'll keep doing it, then yeah, it might be
Okay,
better.
give me 1 second. I
Yes, sir.
apologize.
Yeah, you're good, man. Yeah, all good. That's
I
why we
think I
can
might
edit videos. All good.
I think I might have to keep her on my lap for a little bit anyway.
Right. We get her
Um,
perspective too.
yeah, that's right. Oh, okay. Um, and so yeah, I started to read different books that were Eastern philosophy, metaphysics, even Christian mysticism. And in college, well, I'm fast forwarding a bit, but yeah, that was junior of high school, and into college, because I went to a Catholic school, religious studies was an emphasis. We had to take religious studies courses, but fortunately, they were pretty open minded, and we had a whole Eastern studies department where I took Hinduism, Buddhism, mysticism. Um, wow, she's really going crazy over there. And so that was really interesting, and it helped me kind of build out my belief system, because I got to experience, okay, what does Buddhism look like? And I explored that for a while and took that very seriously. And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to head for the hills and just meditate and go into a cave. Like I got really, really into it. And then we studied Hinduism. And along the way, as I mentioned before, is I was introduced to Autobiography of a Yogi. Um, and I read that, and it really, after, a few years of reading probably 100+ books at that point, the chapter on Kriya Yoga that book talks about, it was literally a light bulb moment, like, aha, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And It's a technique, it's a meditation technique, or I should say it's a breathing technique that it allows you to direct energy into your spine, right? And so you're moving energy up the chakras and into the spine, and you're moving energy away from the five senses and into the body. And through this, it's a way to purify, to upgrade your nervous system, to develop concentration, mindfulness, and so the technique resonated with me, and it's something I've been doing since, I guess that was 2002. It's 2024, and I'm continuing to do it to this day, and it becomes even more and more important in my life as I get older. But as you said, I would say that I'm probably the most Christian that I've ever been, even before, when I was Catholic. It really helped me to come full circle to back to the origins of where I came from in Catholicism, and helped me to see things from a different perspective. Before, when I would read the Bible, I would read it, and I would think, nothing is hitting my heart here. This doesn't feel, I don't feel it the way that most Christians seem to. And now when I go back, I see it from a different lens, from a deeper perspective. And that's been very helpful. I don't want to, she's being very loud.
Yeah.
So
Not too bad. I mean, you can
okay.
kind of hear it, but I wouldn't worry.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I get it.
So yeah, that's kind of been my journey. And spirituality is one of those things that there's not really an end to it. There's always another layer. You can always go deeper. And I've come across, many teachers that have helped, kind of develop core ideas and core principles, and many books. And it's something that I continue to read and pursue, I should say, I guess, more, ever since. A big passion of mine, maybe even bigger than health and fitness, because that's really, if we're not developing ourselves spiritually, like, what the heck are we doing this thing called life for, right? In my opinion.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, one of our mentors that we've had for a while, Dr. Sue Morter, I don't know if you know who she is. She's big into like bioenergetics and some of that. But she talks about how we're actually a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in a physical body, is the way she's always said that. And I remember the first time she said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that just rings so true, that we're here to upgrade ourselves spiritually. We're not here to enjoy a Lamborghini necessarily, or a mansion, or it's not about the 3D stuff. It's about the deeper lessons that we learn when we're here. And I know a lot of the teachers that I've had and mentors around that whole topic of, spirituality and growth. And it makes me think also of near-death experiences. I don't know if you've delved into watching a lot of videos on that. And I find those very fascinating to hear.
Yeah.
There's probably tens of thousands of people out there that have had these kind of experiences, and there's so many of them are pretty much identical. So you kind of get a sense of like, okay, what is it like on the other side? And once you leave here, what's the process like? And, is it exactly the way I was taught in church? Does everybody just, if you haven't asked Jesus into your heart, you're going right to hell? Or, is it just some of the questions, I remember one of my best friends growing up, I remember distinctly being in his parents' kitchen one day. Kind of, it was like a open kitchen dining room, had like a little bar there. And I remember like being there for hours talking about like, like, we happen to grow up in America. We happen to be born where Christian was the religion we were taught. It's said to be the only right religion, but what if we would have been born in India and, or any of these other countries, and believed in Hinduism or Buddhism or any of the other religions, right, of the world? Like, that you would have been taught that those were the right religions, so how do you navigate that? I can remember having just hours and hours of discussions as, sometime in high school, probably, or just after high school, talking those things through at a deep level. Like, how is it that we're here and we happen to stumble on the right religion to go to heaven? But my gosh, if we were 90% of the rest of the world, we wouldn't go to heaven potentially, unless we had a Jesus experience, which, a very small percentage of those people have those experiences. So those things have just, not that I found all the answers by any means, at this point in my life, but it's been, as you said, more of a progression of digging deeper. It's where we started talking about everything today, is this finding the deeper truths of, who am I? Why am I here? And, is it just is Earth a one-stop shop? Jesus or God created you, you come to Earth and you either, have him in your heart and you go to heaven or you go to hell. Like, did he really create all this for just like that one little blip, blip, then it's over? Or is there
Mhm.
more to it? Did we come here, for deeper lessons? Is this just a particular grade in spiritual school? We came to Earth and then we're going to other places to learn other things. And, maybe we have been other genders. Maybe we have been other species. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe we've been a tree at some point in another galaxy, like to learn the
Right.
lessons of a tree. Like, I have no idea. But
Yeah, yeah.
what if, like to me, there's got to be a deeper meaning to all the planets and all the stars and all the galaxies. And, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I mean, if you listen to different people about extraterrestrial civilizations and are they visiting and what are they all about? And it's like, okay, there's a lot more here than just
Yeah.
the little box that sometimes we live in our religion. And again, not that I have a destination to talk about, but those are just things that I enjoy. I don't get into them heavily in my own study, but I certainly dabble in them from time to time and like to, kind of keep that is a part of my growth, and just hearing what other people have gone through, like the near-death experiences and, them leaving their body and going into the spiritual realm, and what are they experiencing, what are they feeling, and what are they seeing, and what is it like, and the how everything is transmitted through thought and there's no real speaking verbally. And it's like, okay, well, those are some principles that I've heard teachers talk about here on earth, that if we master certain elements of ourselves, we can do more of that here energetically. And it's like, okay, all this stuff is starting to align. And to me, it's about, the deeper truth is about discovering the power that we have as
Right.
humans, as creators, to create what we want. And we are actually, expanding consciousness when we do that. Whether it's our business or any other part of our life, when we're creating something in that, we're creating a deeper connection with our spouse or with our children, or impacting people through our purpose in our business. Like, that is all expansive. And when we're needing to, go learn marketing or learn podcasting or whatever, like skill sets, it's part of the expansive process, because we have to discard a part of ourselves that is keeping us from going to the next level. And even if it's in how to do a sales call, or like, those are all growth elements, they're spiritual elements,
Right.
and to me, I love that whole thing. And that's why I like what we talk about a lot, because it's it's not segmenting life apart, and there's all these little separate areas that are untouched. And you said they're very much intertwined and deeply
Mhm.
connected. And I love pursuing growth in all those kind of areas.
Yeah, gosh, you touched on so many things there. On one hand, it's interesting that we're supposed to be the most intelligent species on the planet, but we know so little about what the heck we're doing here, right?
Right.
Um, but I think it can be distilled down to: are you moving toward fear? Are you allowing fear to keep you stuck, or are you moving into growth? Are you leading with love? Are you doing things that are expanding you, like you said? And we may not know the answers to a lot of things, but I think if you allow yourself to be guided by that thought, like, am I cowering away from this because I'm afraid of it? Am I not doing this activity because I fear maybe how hard it'll be, or if I'll fail, or all that? Or are you willing to embrace the unknown, embrace change, step into some of those unknowns regardless of the area, and move from a place of love? Then I think you're moving in the right direction. And as we continue to step into love and expansion, your awareness grows, your experiences grow. When you learn more about yourself, you learn a little bit more about the universe. And as your awareness and your knowledge and your experience grows, then more things begin to be revealed to you. And to go back to it, that's a big part of meditation, is to improve, to increase your awareness, to increase your um, understanding of yourself. And maybe it sounds a little woo woo, but as you meditate, for those of you that do, and I'm sure you do, and you'll know this, it might sound foreign to those that don't, but you get epiphanies, you get light bulb moments, you get insights. The lens of life, the filter of life shifts, things open up. And so you begin to, live life on new levels. And there's, something like a video game where you hit level 10 and you've, beat the game. Those levels seem to never end, and there's always another layer to the experience, and more insights to be gained. And I'm not sure we can even gain all the insights in this life. Uh, but I think that's the point of it. And the other point of it is to not take it so seriously too. I mean, we have to be serious to a certain degree, right? And it is real to a certain degree, but at the same time, don't be so serious too. And have fun with it. And whenever you are enjoying life and having fun, then that's where creativity opens up and intuition opens up, and it doesn't have to be this hard thing that we just have to keep striving and do more or get more, and all that. It's a balance of the two. And going back to the near death experiences, I there was a phase for probably a good year where I was just binge watching at night, just near death experiences. And it's amazing the similarities of the experiences and what they come back with, and they all come back with basically the same message that uh, it's a lot. There's a lot more to this life than just what we think. The meaning of life is to love one another. That we're all connected. That we can't get it wrong, and that we're loved unconditionally.
Mhm.
And you know, whenever we're out of body and in that realm, we don't have egos, and so we are reconnected with all that is and can feel that. But if you're always infinite, unconditionally loving, that can do all things, then you can't understand what you can't appreciate what that is until you come into body and see the contrast of the world. And so the contrast that we experience in this realm is isn't there to keep us down. It's there for us to understand, learn, grow, and appreciate, and also at the same time recognize um, that the contrast isn't necessarily negative. It's just there as an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves.
Yep,
And so
totally agree.
from there, yeah.
Yep, yeah, love that. So, you're talking a little bit about there at the end, and having the fun and enjoying life. That reminds me, and I kind of want to wrap up on the topic of, finances and abundance, material prosperity, that kind of thing. Get your thoughts on that and talk a little bit about that, because, as you know, that's kind of my other half of what we do is talking money, because at the end of the day, and I mentioned a little bit ago when we were talking about, religion and things, that inside the church, money is viewed a certain way. And I've had to challenge a lot of those beliefs, and to get to the point where we have time freedom, we have money freedom. It does take the money piece of that to accomplish that. So whether we like it or not, and I know there's some spiritual teachers that don't like to talk too much about money, and they might want you to just live that poverty lifestyle and you don't need money. And I see money as a tool, and I think that my personal belief is that we live in an abundance universe. I believe God is abundant. I don't think there's any shortage of resources. I mean, he didn't make Earth smaller because he didn't have enough resources to make it as big as he did. I mean, everything that we see, if you plant a seed, it grows. Like, there's no like, well, you planted the thousandth tree, so there's not enough sunlight left for that thousandth tree to grow. I mean, there's an abundance of everything. I think we can all be billionaires. I think we can all live the life that we want, as long as we're tapped into the flow of abundance. And it's a deeper conversation, much of what we've already talked about with other aspects of life. But at the end of the day, we use money. It's how we buy groceries. It's how we heat our homes in the winter and keep them cool in the summer. It's what's powering everything right now that we have, that we're utilizing right now. I mean, our cameras, our phones, our computers, we need money to buy all. It's the currency of transactions. So my view is, how do we make the most of that? How do we expand in that area? How do we make the most of money? So I'm curious, in your experience being a chiropractor and dealing with cash flow, and I know we have similar beliefs about how we want to have money working for us, and doing that. I guess go into what are some of the things about money that you've found to be helpful, that have helped you expand in that area. Maybe I'll wrap up with a few of my thoughts on that as well, but just kind of touch on money and finances. I'd like to hear from your perspective what's worked for you, what hasn't, some of those things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to, I mean, I always trace it back to when I was younger, maybe 18, 19, and I thought ahead, okay, what do I want my life to look like in 10, 15 years? And how does that, how, what passions and what interests do I have that I can use to create the lifestyle that I want so that I can enjoy my life while also helping others and making a good income? And so that all fell in line when I decided to become a chiropractor, just hit so many things at once for me. And so I think, you know, finding something that is of highly valuable, highly sought after service that can help a lot of people and helps a big problem is a good place to start for anyone that just wants to start get the ball rolling and the gears going, is support how they can generate more income. The more people you can serve at a high level, the more income, the more value you're going to create in the marketplace, and the more that's going to be returned to you in the form of money. And so, you know, I was not raised in a very in a wealthy family at all. My dad was a machinist. My mom worked as a medical receptionist. I mean, we live. I think they bought their house in 1979 for $32,000. We sold it for like 85 in 1999. You know, like there wasn't I didn't come from money.
Yep.
But what my parents did do is they wanted to give everything they had to me so that I could become a success. So they introduced me to um country clubs or you know, friends that were better off, that and they took me on different experiences or vacations. And you know, I started to make friends with the people in the rich suburbs. And you know, I was surrounded by I gravitated toward people that were of a higher echelon, not because they were better, but because I knew what the kind of quality of life that I wanted. And oftentimes the people who are the most successful have the most optimized mindset in a lot of different areas. And so I just naturally gravitated toward those types of people. And we've all heard that we're the average of the five people that we interact with the most. And you know, I didn't know those concepts then, but it definitely became apparent that that's, you know, the direction I was moving in. Um, and I think we get what we expect we deserve. And if our mindset is that, you know, even unconsciously, because a lot of it is unconscious for people, they don't realize, they're not aware of what they expect that they deserve. But if you are, you know, expecting not to be able to pay the bills or have enough money, you know, at the end of the month, or if you expect your circumstances not to get any better, they're not going to get any better. As you mentioned, we're we're creators, we're co-creators of our reality. And I don't think we realize how powerful our imagination is. I'm a big Neville Goddard fan, and so you know, I use the power of imagination to help to create changes in my life. And I've been a big journaler. I'm not so much currently, but when I was younger, I journaled all the time. I goal set it all the time. I visualized a lot, um, and I do it more often on now. But I attribute that, a lot of those practices, to creating the lifestyle and the more importantly the mindset that has just become ingrained in me. And I feel like I don't have to do it quite as much now because I just expect things to, you know, not only improve but continue to get better and better as I get older. And so, you know, mindset is the biggest piece here. But also, you know, with law of attraction, I think people do get kind of lost into the just kind of like, you know, doing the mental practices without actually implementing the practical practices. It's like the feminine is, you know, having that mental piece and being and visualizing, but the masculine piece is implementing and actually doing the work. And
Mhm.
both are required to actually create, you know, that thing that you want, to manifest what you want. So I think those have been the most helpful pieces for me to actually get to where I am. And you know, also, you have to think, you know, where you are now is probably where you hoped you would be 5 or 10 years ago, right? But it's also easy to kind of dismiss where we are and always want to have that future goal and get there. And you know, you have to be what's the phrase, content but never satisfied, I suppose.
Yep.
um and I always have to remind myself to really appreciate where I am now and to really feel a deep sense of gratitude to where I am, what I've accomplished, and but also, to not be complacent, and to make sure that well, it's just not even to make sure, because it's ingrained in me to always be growing. It's like I just have to, it's just a part of me. Um, but yeah, to be content with wherever you are, no matter what it is. There's a million things to be grateful for, no matter what your circumstances are, if you're willing to look for it and be open to that, and always be working toward improving.
Mhm. Well, I love how we've, talked on a lot of topics that seem like we're talking health, we're talking money and business, and it's like what we've talked about is back to ourselves and mastering ourselves and having that foundational piece. And, the few of the things that you mentioned in your journey there with just upgrading lifestyle. And I know that was a thing that we did. We had moved to the other side of Michigan several years ago after my wife and I were married because we were hit by a car on foot down in Florida. And after that, we moved back to our hometown and we actually moved into my grandpa's house, which was a rundown farmhouse. And it was great. We lived there for 4 years, but it was getting to the point where my wife and I like literally could not take it being in this house. And we weren't at the place at the time where we could renovate. And we made the decision to sell that house, put that money to work, and we've been renting ever since. But the rental houses we've had were 3 times the size of where we were with my grandpa's house. And I was listening a while back to a guy that I've really resonated with. His name is Jeff Seckinger, and he does a lot of financial topics, and he's a trader, and he used to work, I think, for like Chase or one of the big banks. And he's kind of the stereotypical, he's like a hunk. I mean, he's, like I think younger than both of us. He's pretty ripped, and he's just a real good looking guy, but he's, got businesses, and I'm sure, I don't even know what his net worth is, but it's plenty. And he was talking about why he rents in Miami a condo or whatever that's, in a high rise, it's like 20 grand a month. And he's like, because it's the environment that I'm in. I'm in a
Mhm.
wealthy environment. So it makes me motivated to do wealthy activities and to think wealthy and to have more gratitude and to feel like I deserve all the things that you were touching on. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, with what we do on the financial side, it's a lot of, strategy and different tools and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, and that's why before we went recording, I was telling you about my mentor that said, no, Jeff, don't just talk about life insurance or financial strategies. Talk about all of this, because exactly what we've done today and what we've talked about, what is it? What are the keys to weight loss? What are the keys to money? In a sense, we're talking the exact same message, but for totally two, what would in marketing be two totally different businesses and two totally different things. But at the end of the day, it's about us. It's about who we are, why we're here, finding the better version of ourselves, being on that growth journey, and putting yourselves to where you can have the opportunity to thrive and not putting limitations on, well, I don't deserve to be in a bigger house, or I don't deserve to drive a nicer car, or I don't deserve to take family vacations, or I don't deserve to put my kids in private school. Why not? Because I found that it takes way more energy to remain broke than it does to expand and be able to do nicer things. And, some of my mentors have shared it's not about the things, it's about the person you become, or it's about the experiences that you get to go through. And it's like, as I see my young children, it's like, okay, I have the ability to create a life for them that's basically whatever we want the script to be. I don't have to go by what my parents have said or what they think or my in-laws or the world at large. I can write the script. It's a blank canvas. If I want them to be in private school or I want to homeschool and travel the world, like I literally can create that. And we have the power to do that. And it's just finding that power. It's finding the power with weight loss. It's finding the power with change. It's finding the power with business. That's the core message. And I love that's what we touched on today is not, yes, we did talk a little bit, you did about, what we should be eating and some of those things, but we didn't talk about food labels and kale and spinach, and we didn't go there. We went to what's inside and finding that deeper thing. And I didn't talk financial strategies. You talked about the deeper things of money and finding the vision and finding your why with that and deserving the type of life that we want, because I think it's all available to us. And if it is, why not take it? And why not experience more? And I feel like as you experience greater things, you learn higher level lessons. I look at like my family lineage, and there's been, you know, my grandpa was a third generation farmer. It's like, okay, so there was really no change in any form or fashion. I mean, sure, there was minor changes here or there, the way they raised their kids or whatever, but I mean, by and large, they lived on the same plot of land. They did the identical same work for 100 straight years. There was really no up leveling there, you know, a little bit. My grandpa had a boat. He'd go up to, you know, some lakes around in Michigan throughout the summer. So, you know, that was something that I don't think his dad did. So, okay, some minor things, but no like major leaps forward in like the environment that you live in. Like you said, you know, going to upscale neighborhoods and going, hey, these people seem to have it maybe a little bit more what I'm looking for. That's the level I want to play at, you know? And it's like if I have the opportunity to give my kids a different experience and to learn lessons that aren't the same lessons that we haven't learned yet after several generations, why not I learn them? Let's rise above those things. Let them learn lessons that are at a higher level for them to expand their soul at the level that they're here to do and create more financial abundance for them and for other people. And I know I say this in a lot of the videos. One of the key things that I heard, I think it was first in a Dr. Sue Morter interview. She was interviewing with Lisa Nichols, which was in the movie The Secret, and they were talking about the concept of drink from my saucer, not from my cup. And that was one of those like really like wow, profound concepts of like, okay, you need to be full yourself. You need to be overflowing and then help other people from your overflow. Don't deplete yourself from your main reserves, right? And
Yeah.
I think that fits with everything. That goes with health. It goes with everything. You know, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. I've heard it said a lot, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
be be full yourself, be in command and control yourself. And then from there, you're in a place of empowerment to go help other people. And I think that works with finances. You got to be in control and command financially. You got to have your health in order. If you want to go do things in the world and you don't have the health to go do it, you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation, you hurt, you're achy, painy, you're not going to be able to go do those kind of things. So I love the conversation we've had today. Been great. I love, you know, just touching on those deeper things. I kind of thought that's probably where our conversation would go, but
Yep.
I'm glad that it did. And if there's anybody that's listening to this that, you know, loves what you have to say about this, because I think there's a lot of people out there that, you know, are looking for maybe a certain thing like weight loss. Maybe there's a female right now watching this that I want to lose weight, but I want to be connected with somebody that understands these deeper elements of life and can help guide me at a deeper level than just, hey, exercise for 15 minutes, eat this, eat this. And I know that's part of it, but there's the deeper part. So if somebody resonates with you, Matt, and wants to work with you, how does people connect with you? How do they find you? Do you have content? Share some of the resources that somebody can find that they can connect with you if they want to move forward.
Yeah, sure. So they can go to my website, which is medicalmuscle.co. I'm on Instagram at medical underscore muscle. And then on Facebook under my name, Matt Goodrich. If you put matt.goodrich.75, you can't miss me. So those are the
Awesome.
three ways to get in touch.
Cool. Well, I'll put those links with the video here in the description. So anybody that watches this in the future, they can connect with you and go from
Awesome.
there. So, well, thanks for joining me today, Matt. It's been a great conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly talking about these wonderful concepts and hopefully it helps some people. So appreciate your
Yeah.
time and we'll talk
Yeah. Well,
soon.
thanks so much for having me, Jeff. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk later.
All right. Sounds good.